Half a mile from the nearest road, in a fold of the Yorkshire wolds, there is a valley with a ruined church, a still pond, and a series of low green humps in the grass. Those humps are houses, or they were. If you walk among them, you are walking down the main street of a village called Wharram Percy, a place that was continuously lived in for 600 years, from before the Norman conquest until sometime after the year 1500, when the last families were evicted and the fields were given over to sheep. 200 people once lived here. Today the outlines of their homes are visible only as shadows in the turf, best seen from the air, in low sunlight. Wharram Percy is the most famous of them, but it is not rare. England contains more than 3,000 deserted medieval villages, whole communities that simply ceased to exist. Some were emptied by the Black Death, some were cleared by landlords who wanted sheep pasture, or a private park, or an unspoiled view from a new mansion. Some starved slowly as the land failed, and in every single case, when the village died, the people did not all die with it. The survivors scattered, and they carried, as their surname, the name of the place that no longer existed. That is what this video is about. 17 English surnames, each one a locative name, a name taken from a place, and behind each one, the specific kind of village that vanished from the map of England. Some of these places survive today as living villages too. But the names on this list are fossils. They preserve, in a single word passed down a family line, the memory of settlements that the plague and the plow and the landlord's ambition wiped out. To understand how a name outlives a place, we have to go back through the enclosures, back through the Black Death, all the way to number 17, because the story of the vanished village begins not with a catastrophe, but with something much quieter, a suffix. Numbers 17 and 16, Thorpe and Thwaite. We begin with two words that are not really English at all. They are Norse, and they are the two most reliable fossils of vanished settlement in the entire English language. Thorpe comes from the Old Norse thorp, meaning a secondary settlement, a small outlying farmstead or hamlet, established on the edge of a larger village's land. When Scandinavian settlers colonized the north and east of England in the 9th and 10th centuries, they threw out hundreds of these little thorps across the landscape. And here is the crucial fact: because a thorp was small, marginal, and dependent on a larger settlement, it was the single most likely kind of place to fail. When times got hard, when the plague came, when the land was enclosed, the outlying thorp was abandoned first. Look at the record of England's lost villages, and you find the name everywhere. Thorpe in the Glebe, in Nottinghamshire, deserted. Countless others reduced to a single farm keeping the name alive. The surname Thorpe, carried by tens of thousands of people, is very often the last surviving trace of one of these failed satellite hamlets. Thwaite is its cousin, from the Old Norse Thwaite, meaning a clearing, a piece of land cleared from woodland or waste and brought into cultivation. These clearings, hacked out of the forest edges of northern England, were marginal by definition. Many were later abandoned as the climate worsened in the later Middle Ages and the effort of farming poor high ground stopped being worth it. Two Norse words. Two kinds of place built on the edge of survival, and therefore the two kinds of place most likely to disappear. If your name is Thorpe or Thwaite, your family is named for the settlements that England built first and lost first. Number 15, Sturton. Say it aloud and you can hear what has happened to it. Sturton is a worn-down, swallowed version of Stretton, or Stratton, a name meaning the farmstead or settlement on a Roman road, from the Old English stret, a paved way, the same root that gives us the word street. The name marks something specific, a settlement that grew up along one of the great Roman roads that crossed Britain, roads still in use centuries after Rome itself had gone, and several of these places did not survive. There is a lost village of Sturton in the record. There are Strettons and Strettons across England that shrank to nothing. Sturton illustrates one of the quiet forces on this list. Not plague, not eviction, but erosion. The name itself decays. Stretton becomes Sturton. The pronunciation slurs. A clerk writes it down as it sounds, and within a few generations the connection to the original place is half hidden. A name can outlive its village and then slowly lose the very spelling that would let you find it again. Number 14, Wharram. The name of the valley we started in. Wharram is a genuine locative surname, and it points directly at that emptied village in the Yorkshire wolds, or rather, at the wider Wharram district, which included both Wharram Percy and its neighbor Wharram Le Street. The name itself is thought to derive from an Old English word connected to a bend or a cauldron-like hollow in the land, which is exactly the kind of terrain the village sat in. What makes Wharram the anchor of this whole video is that its death is so completely documented. We know it was thriving in the 12th and 13th centuries, with 2 manors and around 200 people. We know the Black Death struck in 1349. We know that even after the plague, 30 cottages were still recorded in 1368. The village clung on. And we know that the final blow came in the 15th century, when the manor was bought by a family who converted the farmland to sheep pasture and evicted the last tenants. By soon after 1500 it was empty. That is the full life and death of an English village, written in the records and dug out of the ground by archaeologists over 60 years of excavation. If your surname is Wharram, you carry the name of the place that taught historians how all the others died. Number 13. Faxton. Northamptonshire is one of the great graveyards of English villages. Around 100 settlements in that county alone can be classified as deserted. Faxton is one of them. Faxton was a real functioning village, and it died the slow death rather than the sudden one. It was never killed in a single catastrophe. It simply declined, over centuries, its population draining away, its houses falling empty one by one, its fields absorbed into larger farms, until by the 20th century, it was gone. Its church was demolished in the 1950s. Archaeologists excavated the site in the 1960s. Think about that timescale. This was not a medieval tragedy safely locked in the distant past. Faxton was dying within living memory, a village that made it almost the whole way to the modern world and then quietly expired. The surname Faxton, rare as it is the fading signature of a place that took 800 years to disappear and finished the job in the age of the motor car. Number 12. Withmail. Now we reach the truly obscure, and this is where the list becomes something more than a catalog of names, because Withmail is a place almost nobody has heard of, preserved almost nowhere except in a surname and a patch of Northamptonshire earthworks. Withmail was a deserted medieval village, and what makes it valuable is precisely its obscurity. It was never important. It never had a famous lord or a dramatic massacre or a mention in the chronicles. It was just an ordinary small English village that, at some point in the later Middle Ages, stopped being able to sustain itself and emptied out. These are the settlements that matter most for understanding what really happened to rural England, because there were thousands of them, anonymous, unremarkable, and gone. For every Wharram Percy that gets 60 years of excavation and a visitor car park, there are dozens of Withmails, names on an archaeologist's distribution map, and, occasionally, a surname carried by someone who has no idea their name is a headstone for a village. Number 11. Snorescombe. The come ending is one of the most beautiful and revealing in English place names. It comes from the Old English come, meaning a short, steep valley or hollow, and it is especially common in the west and southwest of England. A come name almost always describes a specific fold in the landscape, a particular valley where people once settled. Snorescombe in Northamptonshire was one such settlement, and it too joined the ranks of the deserted. Its name likely combines a personal name, some early landholder, a man called something like Snock, with that valley ending, Snock's Valley. A place named for a single individual who has otherwise vanished from history entirely, remembered only in the fossilized first syllable of a lost village's name. This is the extraordinary intimacy of locative surnames. When your name ends in come, den, lay, or ton, it very often preserves not just a lost place, but a lost person, the forgotten founder whose name got welded to a valley, a woodland clearing, or a farmstead 1,000 years ago, and survives now only because a family carried it away when the place died. Number 10. Cotton. A deceptively humble name. Cotton comes from the Old English cot, a cottage, a humble dwelling, in its plural form, the cottages. It is the origin of the word cottage itself. There are deserted cottons in the record, including in Northamptonshire, and the name tells you something poignant about who lived in these vanished places. A settlement called simply the cottages was not a lordly manor or a market town. It was a cluster of the poorest dwellings, the homes of ordinary agricultural laborers, the people at the very bottom of medieval rural society. And those were exactly the people most vulnerable when a village came under pressure. A wealthy freeholder might hang on through hard times. The families in the cots, the cottagers, with little land and less security, were the first to be squeezed out when a lord decided to enclose the fields or raise the rents. The surname Cotton carries the memory of the humblest houses in England and of the people who were always first to lose them. Number 9. Wolfhampcot. A mouthful of a name, and every syllable is a piece of history. Wolfhampcot breaks down into something like the cottage of Wolfhelm's people, combining an Old English personal name with that same cottage, ending we just met. Wolfhampcot is a documented deserted village in Warwickshire, and it is one of the atmospheric ones. A lonely church still stands, more or less alone, in open countryside, with the earthworks of the vanished village rippling in the surrounding fields. The church outlived its congregation. It stands there yet, a stone survivor presiding over green humps where houses used to be. There is a pattern here worth naming. Again and again, the last thing to die in an English village was its church, the most solidly built structure, the one with the deepest institutional roots. Long after the cottages had collapsed into grassy mounds, the church often remained, at Wharram Percy, at Wolfhampcote, at dozens of sites across England. The church is frequently the tombstone that marks where a whole community is buried. Number 8. Gensthorpe. We return to that Norse Thorpe ending, but Gensthorpe deserves its own entry because it comes wrapped in a folk legend that tells you how completely these places could vanish from memory. Gensthorpe, in Lincolnshire, is a classic deserted medieval village. Its earthworks are so well preserved that they are among the finest in the country. But for centuries, local people had no memory that a real village had ever stood there. Instead, a legend grew up to explain the strange humps in the ground. The story went that Gensthorpe had been a village of thieves, so wicked that it was destroyed as divine punishment, or pulled down to root out the robbers who lived there. The truth is more ordinary and more haunting. Gensthorpe was not smitten by God or demolished for its crimes. It simply died, of plague, or economic decline, or enclosure, like all the others. But the human mind cannot easily accept that a whole village can just quietly cease to exist, so it invented a story dramatic enough to match the eeriness of the site. The surname Gensthorpe, and the many Thorpe names like it, often sit on top of exactly this kind of forgotten, myth-encrusted disappearance. Number 7. Pudding Norton. Yes, that is a real place, and a real surname root. And it earns its spot because the name itself has become slightly absurd over the centuries, which is a fate that befell more than one lost village. Pudding Norton is a deserted medieval village in Norfolk. Norton is one of the most common English place name elements there is, the North Farmstead, or North Settlement, from North plus Ton. The land is thick with Nortons. To tell them apart, each acquired a distinguishing prefix, and this one, for reasons now obscure, possibly relating to sticky or pudding-like soil, became Pudding Norton. The earthworks of the village survive in Norfolk, with the remains of its church, and the name is a reminder that the vanished villages of England were not all poetic or grand. They were ordinary places with ordinary, sometimes faintly comic, names. Pudding Norton and its neighbors across Norfolk and Suffolk, a county pair that is especially rich in deserted settlements. When you carry a Norton name, you may be carrying one of the commonest settlement words in England, and behind it, one of the many that failed. Number 6. Argham. Back to the Yorkshire wolds, the same chalk uplands that held Wharram Percy, because this region is one of the densest concentrations of lost villages in all of England, and Argham is one of its ghosts. Argham is a deserted medieval village in the East Riding of Yorkshire. Almost nothing remains of it above ground. It survives as earthworks, as a name on old maps, and as a rare surname. The wolds are full of these, a whole landscape of vanished settlements, emptied by the same combination of plague and, above all, the conversion of arable farmland to sheep pasture that killed Wharram Percy. There is a grim economic logic that ties this whole region's deaths together. The Yorkshire wolds grew superb wool, and in the 15th and 16th centuries, wool made landlords far more money than tenant farmers did. So across these chalk hills, one village after another was cleared, the people removed, the ploughland turned to grass, the sheep moved in. Argham was one casualty of that transformation among many. Its name survives, its houses do not. Number 5. Eston. Not to be confused with the industrial Eston of Teesside, this is the older locative surname from one of the settlements called Easton or Eston, meaning simply the East Farmstead, East plus Ton, the mirror image of all those Nortons. And here we meet the second great village killer directly, because at least one Eston was destroyed not by plague, but by a landlord's ambition. An Easton in Northamptonshire was emparked around the year 1500, meaning the land was enclosed to create a private park around a great house, with, in the words of the record, accompanying evictions. The villagers were removed so that the Earl could enjoy his landscaped grounds. By the early 18th century, a visitor recorded that the only house left standing was the magnificent seat of the Earl himself. That phrase should stop you. The only house now is the magnificent seat of the Earl, an entire community reduced to a single mansion and its gardens. This was emparkment, and it was one of the cruelest engines of village destruction, because unlike the plague, it was nobody's tragedy but the villagers'. It was a choice, made by a man who preferred a view. Number 4. Newneham. Newneham Courtenay, in Oxfordshire, is the most literary of all the lost villages, because when it was destroyed, a poet was watching. In the 1760s, Lord Harcourt decided to build himself a grand new Palladian mansion and a fashionable landscaped park beside the Thames. The existing village of Nuneham Courtenay stood in the way of the view, so it was demolished, and its inhabitants were relocated to new cottages built in a neat row along the main road, out of sight of the great house. The poet Oliver Goldsmith is widely thought to have drawn on the fate of villages like this for his famous 1770 poem, The Deserted Village, with its lament for a place he called Auburn, sweet Auburn, loveliest village of the plain, emptied by the greed of wealth and the fashion for grand estates. And the records of Nuneham preserve an even sharper detail, the story of an old widow, Babs Wyatt, who begged to be allowed to stay in the deserted village as everything around her was torn down. The surname Nuneham is rare, but it points to the 18th century climax of village destruction, the era when it was no longer plague or wool, but simply aristocratic taste that emptied a settlement. A whole village moved so a lord could improve his view. Number 3. Althorpe. You may recognize this name, and there is a good reason it belongs near the very top of this list. Althorpe, in Northamptonshire, is the ancestral estate of the Spencer family, the family of Diana, Princess of Wales, who is buried there. It is one of the most famous stately homes in England, and underneath that grand estate lies a deserted medieval village. Althorpe, the name is that Norse Thorpe again, Olasthorpe, was once an ordinary settlement. It was depopulated, and the great house and its park rose over the emptied land. This is the pattern of English lost villages made visible in a single famous place. The stately home and the vanished village are not opposites, they are cause and effect. Again and again, the reason a medieval village disappears is that a powerful family cleared it, enclosed its fields, and built their splendor on top of it. The green parkland of the English country estate, so often taken as the very image of timeless rural peace, is frequently a burial ground. Beneath the manicured lawns of Althorpe lies a community that was removed to make them. The surname Althorpe carries that whole story, a Norse hamlet, cleared and built over, its name now attached to one of the grandest houses in the country. Number 2. Percy. We come back, at the end, to the name in Wharram Percy itself, and to one of the most powerful surnames in English history. Percy is not, in origin, a humble locative name like the others on this list. It is Norman French, taken from a place in Normandy, and carried to England by one of the great families of the conquest. The Percys became the Earls of Northumberland, among the mightiest lords of the medieval North. It was a Percy family that held the manor of Wharram from the late 12th century, which is precisely why the village is called Wharram Percy and not just Wharram. And this reveals the final piece of the puzzle. The lost villages of England each carry, in their double-barreled names, the mark of the lord who owned them. Wharram Percy, Nuneham Courtenay, Middleton, the lord's family name welded to the settlement's name. When you carry a great territorial surname like Percy, you carry the name of the people who owned these villages, who profited from them when they lived, and who, in case after case, cleared them when sheep or parkland promised to pay better. The two halves of a lost village's name are the two halves of its story. The first half is the place. The second half is the family who held the power of life and death over it. Number 1. Middleton. The most common kind of English place name imaginable, the Middle Farmstead, the settlement between two others, and there are Middletons all across England. But one Middleton earns the top of this list because its destruction is the single clearest, best documented, most quietly outrageous example of a vanished village in the entire country. In the county of Dorset stood a village called Middleton, clustered around the great church of Milton Abbey. It was a proper town, really. It had a grammar school, almshouses, shops, inns, and a brewery. People had lived and worked there for centuries. In the 18th century, the abbey and its lands were bought by a wealthy man named Joseph Damer, who became Lord Milton and later Earl of Dorchester. Damer built himself a grand mansion beside the abbey, and he decided that the town of Middleton, the living, working town on his doorstep, spoiled his view and his privacy, so he had it destroyed. Over a period of years in the 1770s and 1780s, Damer demolished the entire town. He employed the famous landscape gardener Capability Brown to design a new, tidy, picturesque village tucked out of sight in a nearby valley, a neat row of identical thatched cottages, now known as Milton Abbas, one of the first planned villages in England and often praised today as impossibly pretty. The villagers were moved there whether they wished it or not, and there is one detail that has never been forgotten. One resident, a lawyer, refused to leave his home in the old town. So Lord Milton, it is recorded, had the sluice gates opened and deliberately flooded the man's house to force him out. That is the story hiding inside the surname Middleton. Not every Middleton, of course, the name is far too common for that. and most Middletons come from ordinary villages that still exist, but somewhere in the spread of that ordinary name is the memory of the Dorset town that a single rich man erased because he preferred to look at grass. A grammar school, almshouses, shops, a brewery, generations of families, all demolished and replaced with a view. The vanished village of Middleton is the whole of this video in one place. The plague emptied villages by accident, but Middleton was emptied on purpose, by a man with the wealth and the power to unmake a town, and the confidence to think a prettier landscape was worth it. And when it was gone, the people carried the name away with them, Middleton, a name so common you would never guess that one of the places behind it was drowned out of existence by its own lord. 17 surnames, Thorpe and Thwaite, the Norse hamlets built on the edge of survival. Wharram and Argham, emptied for wool on the Yorkshire chalk. Faxton and Withmail and Snorscombe, the anonymous villages that simply faded. Cotton, the cottages of the poor. Wolfhampcott, where the church still stands alone in the fields. Eston and Newnham and Althorpe, cleared for a park and a mansion. And Middleton, drowned out of existence for a view. Every one of them is a place that is no longer on the map. And every one of them is a name that is still, right now, being carried by living people, printed on passports, signed at the bottom of letters, called out in school registers in England and America and Canada and Australia. The village died, the name did not. That is the strange power of a locative surname. It is a container for a place. When the houses fell and the church emptied and the fields went back to grass, the one thing that survived the death of the village was the word, the name a family took with them when they walked away for the last time, and passed to their children, and their children's children, across 500 years, down to someone who may never have known that their own surname is the last standing wall of a village that England forgot. So if your name is on this list, or if it ends in Thorpe, Tun, Cum, Ham, Cot, or any of the endings we have walked through today, go and look it up. Find the place it comes from, and check whether that place is still there, or whether it survives, like so many, only as green humps in a quiet field, best seen from the air, in the low light of a winter afternoon. Because you may be carrying more than a name. You may be carrying the last trace of a village that vanished, and the memory of the people who, when everything else was lost, refused to let go of where they came from.